I taught the title here, I put down positive attitude. When I got the letter from Linda Vigil from the Academy about the trip, the first thing she said that we needed to take with us was positive attitude. And then she gave the list of all the other things that we needed to take along. And the last thing she put on the list was positive attitude. And we talked about that when we were down there. And she said that, and Linda's let out on about 9 or 10 of these trips, she says. And she says there's always a couple kids that after they get there decide maybe they don't want to be there, and or don't want to work mainly. That was not the case this time. Everybody helped out. Everybody had a wonderful attitude, and you will see that this morning as we proceed through the pictures. I took about 120 pictures while I was there, and yet I still didn't get some of the ones I wanted, so I emailed some of the other people that were there, and back and forth we were able to get a few more pictures. So I want to thank, she's not here now, but a lady from Hutchinson by the name of Michelle Buckholt sent me a bunch of pictures that helped out too. So what we're going to do, I put about 50 of these on a jump drive yesterday. My computer at my office kind of wanted to make it like they have at the funeral homes where, you know, it moves around and every few seconds it goes to the next one. So I'm going to ask the people in the booth there that they'll just have to pause them in between, and then I'll tell them when we go to the next one. The first one that you see there, that is the Puerto Rican flag, similar to ours, stripes, red, white, and blue, single star, and that is their flag. Next picture. Can I try that? Okay. I'll just shut this one off just in case. There's a little bit of a lag between these. Is that working? There we go. Okay, you can see Puerto Rico's down there. You got Florida, the Bahamas, and then you had the Haiti and Dominican Republic, and then we got the little island of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is, go ahead, okay, go to the next one. Puerto Rico is an island that's about 110 miles long. Yeah, we'll stop there for a minute. It's about 110 miles long, about 35 to 38 miles wide. There's 3 other little islands there off to the east side there. And if you add it all together, it comes up to about, I had it in my notes here, 5240 square miles. Now, to put that in perspective, Otter Tail County and Becker County together are 3672 in square miles. So it's about 1.4 times the size of these two counties. We have a population of 91,000. Puerto Rico has a population of 3.66 million. And most of them live along the coast because the center part of the island is quite mountainous. Okay, we can go to the next picture. Now, I did some statistics. This is the students getting ready to leave the academy. You can see it was cold when we left. I ran some statistics just to take some other things into account. They have 311 miles of coastline. The coldest month is January, where the average high is 83.1 degrees. That's their high, average high. Their warmest months are June, July, August, September, and October, 5 months. In those 5 months, the average high is 88. Now, the warmest day that we had there was on Sabbath, just before we left. It got to 93, and then we had a tremendous rainstorm right after that. Their driest month is February, 2.15 inches of rain on the average, and their wettest months are basically May through November, and they average about 5 inches of rainfall. This year, when they were there, they told us that it rained virtually every day from mid-December to mid-February. About 60 days straight they had rain. We didn't have a bit of rain until Sabbath when we were getting ready to leave the next morning. I was going to go around and take some pictures, there was a trail around going to get over the camp. I was going to take some pictures from up there, but it rained about 2 hours and 45 minutes, so I didn't get a chance to get up there. Next picture, please. Okay, see what 6 hours of flying will do to you for as far as your attire? This was us packing all of our goodies into a big cargo van at the San Juan Airport. Next picture. And you can see that's a mountain. This was right behind our cabin, just looking up right behind our cabin. And there was a trail that actually went just alongside of our cabin and up and around, and then it went to the right. I never climbed up there. Somebody might have. Next picture. Okay, if you can see in the middle of this picture, there's 3 tall power poles. Those are brand new power line poles. The power line comes to there. The lines go from there down to the ground, and that's where they sit. And that's about a quarter mile from the camp. And I don't know how long those poles have been there, but that's how far as they've gotten trying to string new lines. Very green, but Ivan, the elder of the little church down the road, said that after the storm hit, there wasn't a leaf left on the trees. Everything was ground. I imagine similar to what we have here with a narrow strip where the tornado goes through. It takes everything off. But he said everything was brown. There was nothing left. But that's come back in matter of 6 months. Next picture, please. This is the smoke shack of their generator. They have a generator on the camp. It's 80 kilowatt, which you farmers, that would be equivalent to about 105 to 110 horsepower. They run the thing about 20 hours a day. They usually start it up mid to late afternoon, and then run it all night the next morning, and then they'll shut it off sometimes, usually after breakfast. They have a big walk-in refrigerator that they have to take care of, but it can manage that much without it. Eduardo, the camp ranger, had 355, you'll appreciate this, you farmers, 355-gallon barrels, put them in the back of the pickup, and every 3 or 4 days he ran into town to fill them. That thing that we had, a little blurb this morning at Sabbath School talked about diesel was kind of hard to find. Well, he's been able to get it. And I asked him, I said, well, how long does that last? He was unloading 3 barrels there that one day, and he says that was on a Tuesday, and he says, I'll have to go in and get some again on Friday. So he's running a 55-gallon barrel about every day. But when you think about it, at 20 hours or 20 hours, that's 2.5, 3 gallons an hour he's using. He did not have a pump to transfer his fuel from the tanks in the pickup to the down there, but fortunately he was up on a hillside so he could siphon it down. And that's how he did it. And he thought nothing of it. Next picture. This was our group. This was the academy kids. We got in on a Friday night. This was Sabbath. Evan Swanson, the history teacher at Maplewood, his daughter Sarah is an attorney up in Grand Rapids, and her family was there. They had rented what they call an Airbnb for a week, and they were already there a couple days ahead of us. And they were about 2 blocks from the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. So we went to their place, and then on Sabbath afternoon, everybody went out to the beach. Next picture. Monday morning, we were there looking around, and I noticed, and other people did too, that railing that's back to that black railing. Right on the back side of it, there was huge plastic bags full of pop cans. I mean, probably 7 or 8 of them just running over, big bags. And we asked them, we said, why don't you turn them in or sell them? And they said they won't take them unless they're smashed. And so Monday morning, while everybody was kind of waiting for our assignments, or not so much assignments, but to get paint or whatever we were supposed to use for the day, somebody started pitching them over the railing. And so I just made a call. I said, hey, kids, get over here. We got a project. And everybody came, and they started smashing them. There was, the next picture. Okay, and this is where they were digging them out. The black there, you can see that's where some bags were, and I don't know, I counted probably 6, 7 bags there. But they found many, many more down in the weeds. This is Melissa. You can tell she's just started there because she didn't have any gloves on. Later in the week, she would have definitely had gloves on doing what she did because of all the critters that we'd find running around there. Okay, next picture. When we got done, in an hour's time, there's 10 bags of smashed cans. And we did that in 1 hour because we had so much help. Next picture. Okay, now here the boys are busy painting lines on the parking lot. They had a big camporee coming the next Sabbath, and they figured they had a couple hundred students coming in, adventurers and on up, and they wanted the parking lot striped so that the people would know where to park. So they started doing the next picture. And that's one of the Swanson Lane girls painting. Next picture. Okay, now we are at, this was Tuesday evening. We're at Ivan's. Now, Ivan's the retired elder from the little church over there. He's retired from his work. He's not retired from being an elder. He's retired from his work. And, you listening, Dave? He bought the top of a mountain to build a new house. And this was from his house. I just walked over to the edge and took a picture. Those cattle are, I don't know, 300 feet below us or more. Next picture. And here's his house, right up on a mountaintop. Next picture. This is looking across the way there. This is a little bit kind of focused. It was getting towards evening, and so the apertures had to open up quite a bit on the cameras to take pictures. But you can see some little blue tarps and whatnot down in the valley there. That was his neighbor down below. When the hurricane hit, all of a sudden overnight, his yard was inundated with chickens. They blew in with a hurricane. So he put up all of these little impromptu sheds and whatnot, and evidently he was a chicken farmer just overnight. Next picture. And this is, are you listening, Dave? This is the pool that he invited us to come and spend the evening with. Again, right up on top of a mountain. He had a telescope, and he actually took some of the group out the night before to show him his place and how to get there, and inviting us out. And with that telescope, you could see the city of San Juan, which is about 70 miles away. And then if you turned it the other way, you could see the Caribbean Ocean. So he was that high, you could see both sides. Next picture. We were working there. They were starting up on the other end of the parking lot to make lines. And there was a bunch of bushes right here. And one of the fellas in our group, one of the men, asked the ranger if he had a pair of pruners, nippers, and he went like this. Well, he handed him a machete. And they use them down there a lot. And so the bush that we were trying to cut off, I would hold it out a ways, and it had a lot of stickers on it, thorns, and then he'd take a whack at it, and I, further back in. Of course, he had to be careful because he didn't want to get his arms and wrists. But we whacked and whacked and whacked, and we got it all out of there. When we got out of there, we discovered that there was a sidewalk there. Well, this part of the sidewalk was all busted up on account of the roots from that tree. So, not having the right tools, the Sawzall, we'd have been done in a few minutes. Well, we brought a chainsaw, and that chain just promptly got dull. But we worked on it, and then we ended up getting the rest of it out with a pickaxe. But we did get that out of there enough that we could go ahead and cement that in. But cement was all mixed by hand, because you can do that when you got a lot of help, which went pretty good. Again, another thing that would have been a half-hour project here with the right tools. There was a 2.5, 3-hour project. Next picture. And that's the bushes that we pretty much worked on, and then there they had all the lines striped on the parking lot. Next picture. Okay, let's go back here a little bit. Many of us remember our days as a youngster going fishing with a bamboo pole. So we all have fond memories of bamboo. Not so down there. Bamboo is a weed. It's a noxious weed as far as they're concerned, and it grows very, very fast. The fellows went, I wasn't there this day. He had left me at camp doing something else. But this is behind the little church that we were working on. And they went there, I think on Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. And they cut this off. Now, you can see there's a small water bottle in there. Be the same size. Probably the same size as this one here. So that gives you an idea. And that's about a year's growth. So they're, 4 inches across. A lot of them look like, when they were cut down, they looked like the size of like a 4-inch irrigation pipe. And they said they were cut back about a year ago. Okay, next picture. And you can see how they'll grow out like any other tree. They want to grow towards light. So they would grow out. That one's leaning out probably 40 feet. And they were going the other way too, up over the church. So that's what those fellas did. They cut that stuff off. Then they got up onto the church. And they had to power rush the roof off this little church. They knew it was leaking someplace, and they found the leak, and they got that plugged too. So that was done Monday or Tuesday of the week we were there. Next picture. This is the park ranger. His name was Eduardo, and I can't pronounce his last name. Everybody called him, and he wanted to be called Birdman. And there was a little story behind it. Evidently, when he was a young man, he was in an eating contest of some sort, and somebody said, "You eat like a vulture." And so they started calling him Vulture after that, but he didn't like it, so he got him to change it to Birdman. And he'll walk around, and he'll come over where you're there, and he'll go, because and he's very friendly and very hard worker. I mean, some of the things that he did there were just Herculean tasks. What he's doing here, he's whacking open a coconut with his machete, and you can see there's bananas and plantains ahead of there in his pickup. Next picture. And they use their machetes for virtually everything. You can see there's a dog running there. Dogs everywhere down there. A lot of dogs. And on the road, you can't drive fast enough that you're ever going to hit them. They always get out of the way. So I imagine most of them die of old age. He was taking out the coconut for everybody to eat. Next picture. Okay, and this is Coco. Coco is the cook. We thought when we went down there that we were going to have to do our own cooking, and they just had planned a menu, and they went and bought all the food they needed at a Sam's Club over in Anaceta. But when we got there, Coco is probably about mid-60s. He lost his wife about 4 or 5 years ago, and he's the camp cook, and the conference pays him to come out and cook. And when Coco's in the kitchen, you stay out of his kitchen. You can come help clean up when it's all done. But other than that, it's Coco's kitchen. And and he was, very nice, took care of us all. Again, didn't speak English. Very few people down there speak English. Next picture. That country they got U.S. dollars, gas is sold by liters. All the road signs are in Spanish. The mile markers on the side of the road are kilometer markers, and yet the speed limit signs on the road are in miles per hour. So, and they're thinking about trying to become the 51st state, but nobody down there speaks English. There's your plantains. They did some things with those. They would smash them out flat and bread them and fry them. I'm not sure. I thought they kind of wasted them because they taste pretty good alone. Yeah. The next picture. They had 4 fruits for us down there. Okay, here, this is Birdman again. Cut the ends of these off and let everybody drink them. These were fresh and they were full of coconut milk. No dehydration or anything. Yeah, that's the outer shell. what you buy in the store where you see that brown ring, that's what you buy in the store. See, but that outer shell, they take that off. That's not edible. But then, because these were just picked and very fresh, they were full of the coconut milk, and it was very, very sweet. Next picture. And here's part of the leftover remnants of the power grid that's never gotten put back in place. Everybody in the major cities is up to full power. Although in the big cities, they haven't picked up the old lines yet. They just put up new ones. There's still old lines down laying around. Next picture. And this was down by the coast. This was by the town of Aniceto. And you can see everything's flat down there. And as you get further inland, it's kind of mountainous. Right after I took this picture down the road, and we were traveling, and you don't ask anybody to stop like that. But just down the road there, I saw a farmer actually was just wrapping up some round bales of hay. And I imagine down there with the tropical climate like that they make hay probably year round. Next picture. And we got stopped on our way back to the camp one day as they were trying to work on power lines. We saw 4 different companies that were working with trucks like this. There was one company from in Puerto Rico, one from Indiana, one from Oklahoma, and one from Texas. So the ones that we saw. Next picture. And they're working again. We'll take the next picture. Okay. This is the little church that we were talking about. I want to thank Bob McTaggart for making me think a little bit. The other day he asked me, he says, what was your best experience and your worst experience while you were down there? And I said, well, there was no worst experience. Maybe cold showers, that might have been the worst experience. But I said the best experience was the little church we worked on. And I didn't really go into a whole lot of detail, but I told him I'd tell you about it today. This is the little church, and we knew that they needed some help. They were going to try and hire a carpenter or contractor to work on it last fall. Well, then when the hurricane hit, you can't get anybody. Everybody's so busy. So we were there on, I think we were there on Wednesday unloading some material. There was a little carport in the back of the church, and I didn't take any pictures of that because we didn't finish it. It was like 12 by 22. And it was just a monoslope on the back, and there were 4 pillars. And they wanted cement put in the back, enclosed, and those 4 pillars made like 3 big openings or windows. They wanted 2 of them closed, and the one in the middle, they wanted that left open for shutters with maybe a cement beam in the middle of it. And then the front end would be also enclosed, and then they would be with a door, and then they already had water out there. And then they would just make that would be an area for a lunchroom, a little fellowship room. So I just peeked in the church that day. There were 11 pews in the church, 6 on one side, 5 on the other, and I would say they'd hold about 5 people each. So we have a little church that seats 55 people. So anyhow, they needed this work done. I'm going to stop right here and give you a few more statistics. I gave you a bunch of statistics of the country, but I'll give you a little Adventist statistics. In Minnesota, we have 5.6 million people. We have 9,834 members as of the end of 2016. Puerto Rico has 4 conferences. We got 1, they have 4. 32,908 members out of that 3.66 million people. So they do have 4 conferences there. 63, I think there were 63 churches in this conference where this was. And there were probably a lot of them were small. People can't drive too terribly far in the mountains. But anyhow, they wanted this church work done. Like I told you, they wanted that back end fixed. They wanted the roof fixed, and it needed painted. Okay, next picture. And that's Linda Vigil there, and one of the ladies. They're looking into this thing. Oh, I think we went a little bit too far, maybe. Back up? No, I guess not. Okay, well, these might have got out of sequence. This is up the canyon, up the road a ways. There was a river down there, and they said, we got to go up to the next little village up the canyon, and there's a house that you want to look at. This house was halfway washed out by the hurricane, the torrential rains that came with it. There's a little creek probably 40 feet below there, and you could almost jump across it now, but it was that high, and it actually took off the back of that house. Now, they went in there and put up, it looks like cattle fencing or something they put in there just so people wouldn't happen to go in there and step off that. And if you look closely, there's a ladder hanging on the back side there. And it'll be a while before they get that ladder off because the step below it's about 40 feet. Next picture. We were working that Friday at the church, and guys were in the back doing the cement work, and all of a sudden you heard this song and music, and I'd only heard it maybe once or twice in my life because I grew up out in the country, but it's something you never forget. You know, your association neurons kick in immediately, and it was an ice cream truck, and he was headed for the next little village up the canyon, I'm sure. So anyhow, you've never seen this before, but there were two grown men, and I wasn't one of them, standing out in the road flagging him down to make sure he'd stop. He had no intention that he was going to the next town. And he stopped there, next picture. And then the contractor that was helping us works through the We Care program that comes out of Berrien Springs, Michigan, and they're the ones that put together these mission trips. And he was with us, and he had some cash with him from the We Care Foundation. So he evidently paid for everybody's ice cream. I didn't take any that day. This man here that you see in the foreground is the pastor. We'll talk about him more later, but two 40-some-year-old men out there standing in front of that truck, so he'd have to stop. Next picture. This is the viney plants there that have worked on the power line. Been down. When I was down there, I wasn't sure the date of the hurricane, and I thought I'll have to look it up when I get home. Well, I didn't have to because we got home on that Tuesday, and it said it had been 6 months. So it was 6 months from a week ago Tuesday that the hurricane hit. And these plants have all started climbing up on those power lines because nobody's been out there to fix them yet. Next picture. This is some of the work inside the church that you can see. They had scraped it. This is what our task was. If you look closely there, no glass down there in the windows at all. Shutters and bars. Bars are on the inside, shutters are on the outside. You can close them completely. Sometimes they put screens on, sometimes they don't. There were no bugs. In the cabin where we slept, the guys on the other side left their door open every night so it would cool off a little bit more. I maybe experienced like 3 mosquitoes the whole time I was there. No bugs. Next picture. Okay, and I think we saw this one other time. That other one probably got in or out of place. Okay, here are the ladies working on this church, painting. And some of them are rollers, and you can't see what some are using. But when you go to those third world countries like that, the thing you have to do is improvise. What you see here is a water bottle. This one's a little bit small, but then this is a ½ liter. But the 1 liter ones, would take them, put the cap back on, cut them in half, turn them over, fill them with paint, enough so you can get a brush and 2 paint cans. Because the paint they bought was in 5-gallon cans, so you didn't have really a can to work with. But that's what a lot of them were using. Next picture. And now that this is Michael. He's got a long-handled roller, and he's working on the outside. And you can see there's a passerby behind us. There was a real bad chuck hole in the road right there, so everybody had to get real slow when they went by. They had to slow down real slow, and that lady is watching what we're doing. Okay, next picture. And that's Linda again working on the paint on this thing. Next picture. And we're working outside. I was handing stuff up and down on the ladder there. I told you earlier about the pastor with his ice cream and his Cubs cap on. Well, that's him up there on the flat part of the roof. And Jody Anderson is the lady painting there. She's on the roof, and it's Melissa Chafee's on the painting the orange here. So anyhow, the pastor was talking to Jody up there, and she couldn't understand him because he was speaking in Spanish and she was speaking in English. So she says, get Adriana over here. Adriana's a girl at Maplewood. She's from Mexico, and she's fluent in Spanish, and she was one of the 4 that could translate for us. Says, get Adriana over here. So Adriana came over. She says, what's he saying? So he talked to her in Spanish, and she talked back and stuff. And, well, what's he saying? Well, she says, Adriana says, he thinks you're lollygagging. And so you can see that we had a lot of fun there. Everybody had a good time. Next picture. Okay, now we're to Sabbath, all right? We had to spiff up the main camp because we knew there were 200 adventurers and pathfinders coming in the next day or two. And here, this is Sabbath morning, and they're coming into the auditorium. Now, before I went on that thing, Joan and Dave and I looked on my phone. We Googled or YouTube the camp. Well, what we watched was a video like what would happen in case of an earthquake or something like that. It was a safety video. That was not this camp. That showed a nice gymnasium and bleachers. That was something else. They were just using it. That was not this camp. Next picture. This was the biggest building they had. Okay, and then here you can just see all these kids were just dressed to a T. Man, you'd be so proud of them. Now all of those white chairs, those are just plastic, patio chairs that you could buy anywhere. And I spent one afternoon, we washed, the girls washed every chair, and they flipped them upside down, and if any of them had gum on them, they brought them to me, and I spent about 3 hours with a putty knife taking gum off the bottom of about 50 of those chairs. But we got them all spiffed up, ready for Sabbath. Next picture. And each of the little clubs there, making sure everybody's in order and knows their parts and what they have to do. Very organized, very organized. Next picture. Here was one of the little groups that was up on the hill that had, they had put up some big kind of awnings, and then they would put tents underneath them. And they were just walking down to the auditorium. But just dressed absolutely to a T. Perfect. Next picture. Okay, this is the church that we were working in. Those are the windows over there that had all that paint peeled underneath. Those young people and the ladies and stuff, because the men were working back on the cement, but they painted the inside and the outside of that church in one day. We did it on Friday. Now, I don't know as far as the sundown. With a mountain right behind you, it's kind of hard to tell when the sun goes down, but we did put in a long day. But we did that whole church in one day. And a lot of people in the area thought the church was closed. They thought the church was closed. But I guess because the way it looked. Next picture. You know, Jesus said in that last week when he was there, walked out of the temple, and he said, it will be destroyed and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. Well, he was talking about his body, and they didn't realize that they looked at this mammoth temple and they said, how could anybody rebuild it in 3 days? Well, that's not what Jesus was talking about. But we basically refurbished that church in one day. Now, this is the pastor. Again, this is on Sabbath. And that's Adriana, the girl, and she translated his sermon for us. Next picture. And here's the outside of the church that people drove by a day before that, thought it was maybe not even being used. It was abandoned. All of that orange got painted. The darker on the bottom was a granite, and we washed all of that. Next picture. And this is the front. Now, right behind those two ladies, there's a little stuff that didn't get finished. That's a little planter. They're going to take that out and put in a handicapped ramp right there. So that's why we didn't paint that. But other than that, inside and out of that church in one day, because everybody got along and everybody worked hard and everybody could see the end in sight, and we all had one goal and we finished it. There were a number of other things, some things I was going to put in today that I kind of left out a little bit. Jesus talking about Peter. He says that before the rooster would crow 3 times, or twice, you will deny me 3 times. Well, we got reminded of that every morning down there because there were roosters. And I think it's Mark 30, I think it's Mark 13:38, the last verse in Mark 13 talks about, Jesus says, well, if somebody left their house and they left it for the servants would have to be ready all the time because they might come at morning or noon or night or when the roosters crowed or at dawn. The roosters definitely do crow before dawn. Now we know that Jesus never slept the night. His 3 disciples did. He was kind of put out about that, but Jesus never slept. And yet in the morning, probably about 5 o'clock in the morning, when that girl says, I know you were with him. I know you were with him. And Peter denied it 3 times. That was about the time the roosters crowed. And they did crow, because I looked at my watch every morning when I heard them. It got daylight there about the same time it did here, 5:04 to 5:18. And every morning it was still dark when the roosters would crow. So chickens haven't changed much in 2,000 years, because what Jesus said about the being ready, because the master may come home. Okay, the song that I wanted for closing was, it's in your bulletin, Far Beyond the Sun. I did not realize it's not in the hymnal, it's not in the celebration book, but we know it, and so Tim's going to sing it, and then he's probably going to let you help out on one of the stanzas. So, closing song is Far Beyond the Sun.